So it looks like we have another example of a major woke flop in the opening of a box office, and it was predicted a mile away. We talked about it a few times actually on the channel, and this one has to do with Shazam. Fury of the Gods. Apparently, it has failed to meet the first film's box office opening, or honestly, it even bombed so hard that it didn't even get close to reaching Morbius's numbers, which is crazy. I think it did 8 million less than Morbius, one of the worst movies that Marvel has come out with in recent memory. It did even less than that. And that's absolutely insane. So let's get into the article, guys. This one comes to us from CBR.com, and it says Shazam Fury of the Gods fails to meet the first film's box office opening. The Shazam sequel easily tops the box office in its debut weekend, but only grosses nearly half of what the 2019 original film earned. Gee, I wonder why that is. I'm sure they're gonna blame superhero fatigue. I'm sure they're gonna blame a whole bunch of things, but ultimately there's only two things to blame. One, it's doing identity politics. Obviously people doesn't like that, but two, the real reason is that nobody feels like they should watch this movie if DC is rebooting their DCEU. This is not part of the reboot. This is an Elseworld story. So why are they going to want to come out and see this movie if ultimately the story doesn't mean anything to the DCEU? People are going to look forward to the new DCEU. And I guess if you want to go see this just to go see a movie, then yeah, you can do that, obviously. And DC, in my opinion, I've said this many times, should have stuck to just Elseworld stories. I think they do that better than a continuity style thing like Marvel's doing with the MCU. But still, there's so many reasons why this thing failed, and we're going to get into it. But I like how CBR cannot just let it go and admit that this thing is flopping. So they have to say, oh, Shazam sequel easily tops the box office in its debut weekend, but completely leaving out the fact that it did 8 million less than Morbius. So yeah, okay, if you top the box office when you're literally surrounded by people that can't even get anywhere close to a movie like this, what does it even matter? It says, it appears Shazam, Fury of the Gods, titular deities are not conjuring enough weekend premiere momentum at the box office to even match the film's predecessor. The sequel to DC Comics' adapting hit film would enjoy an unexceptional victory for its debut, earning $30.5 million at the domestic box office, accrued across 4,071 theaters. It leads last week's newcomer Scream 6, which puts it in decent second place performance of $17 million. Unfortunately for the franchise's future, Fury of the Gods opened to even less than its already inauspicious early tracking number of 35 to 40 million. Moreover, it represents nearly half of the 53.5 million earned by the original Shazam in 2019. The film didn't fare much better overseas, with 35 million bringing its worldwide gross to $65 million. Wow. That is honestly so bad for a movie like this. But again, there's many different reasons for that. You can come up with your own. I have mine. Obviously, everybody can think differently, but ultimately, I really just don't think people give a shit. I don't think people care about Shazam Fury of the Gods. And all the articles that are coming out about the forced diversity, all this stuff, the LGBTQ stuff, it's just stuff that turns people off. So every time you turn people off, you're losing more and more and more people that you should have just held on to. You should have just shut up and held on to as many people as you could, because you were going to need it. But unfortunately, they decided to do what they were going to do, and now they are where they are. It says, by comparison, Shazam, which opened on April 5th of 2019, went on to reap 140 million at the domestic box office, boosted by foreign totals of 366 million worldwide. While that doesn't meet the standard of being a hit in the world of superhero cinema, the film was a uniquely low-budgeted offering, operating with around 90 to 100 million. Thus, it was considered a dark horse entry for the Warner Bros. DC Comics continuity, and a promising seed from which an exponentially more lucrative sequel would sprout. While Fury of the Gods didn't go overboard, bearing a budget of only 125 million, it now appears unlikely to match the lofty expectations set after the first film became a fan favorite hit. Now again, I don't really consider that to be a hit, because if the budget had about 100 million and you do marketing and whatnot, even if you do the average of about 200 million with marketing, you also got to factor in that 366 million worldwide, after the movie theaters take about 50% of the cut, now you're not looking too hot. It looks like you didn't make your money back, and that's the problem with a lot of people that don't understand how these numbers work. So it says, consequently, Fury of the Gods is now branded with the ignominy of having put in the worst start, not counting pandemic-era offerings, for comic book superhero films, a genre whose omnipresence continues to be threatened by underwhelming box office performances. It's a phenomenon Marvel had the misfortune to experience in February with the short sprint of the threequel Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Over a month, that film's February 17th wide release, it now sits at 453 million worldwide, unlikely to ever cross the 500 million threshold. Yep, that movie is mega flopping hard, and a lot of people saw that coming. And unfortunately, it sucks because Kang should not have been introduced in an Ant-Man movie. That's just my opinion. Ultimately, I mean, I don't watch this Marvel shit anymore. I'm so checked out of it because it's kind of like Disney Star Wars for me. Like, I don't even care anymore. I don't care to give Disney a view, even if it's gonna save thousands of other people from watching it. I just don't care. Marvel, for me, is completely dead. What they did with Phase 4, especially going into Phase 5, you kind of just, like, fell flat. You fell flat on your face, and it's not enjoyable anymore. I don't even have fun roasting this shit anymore. Obviously, I can still report on the analytics and stuff, but ultimately, like, even roasting it is kind of boring for me. It's not worth it for me. But anyway, it says, while there are several reasons why Fear of the Gods is failing to bottle the first film's lightning, some point to the overwhelming disappointment of critics, who generally convey the opinion that the sequel fell into formulaic trap that drained the franchise of the joy that made the first film special. Indeed, the second film currently sits at 53% on average on Rotten Tomatoes, although that is somewhat offset by this 87% audience score. However, the film is also dealing with a lack of brand confidence in the wake of the widely known internal shakeups at Warner Bros. Pictures' parent company, Warner Bros. Discovery, after the proverbial hatchet was taken to an array of content under the shared branding formerly known as the DC Extended Universe. Most notoriously, the deep in production HBO Max Batgirl movie, a new regime took over with designs to reset everything. Thus, James Gunn and Peter Safran, co-CEOs of the newly codified DC Studios, would unveil an elaborate new slate of DC Comics film and television adaptations called the DC Universe, leaving long-planned offerings such as the recent SHAZAM connected Black Adam and now SHAZAM Fury of the Gods with the stigma of being continuity leftovers. And so 100%. This paragraph right here is exactly what I was saying earlier on in the video. People don't want to see this movie because ultimately, if you're trying to see this movie because you were enjoying the continuity that existed prior, now you know that's not going to exist anymore. Now you know there's no reason for you to even bother seeing this movie in the first place, at least from a story aspect. If you just want to see a movie play out and you want to go enjoy like a superhero movie and whatnot, you obviously have that right to do so. But ultimately, it means nothing. None of this means anything. SHAZAM Fury of the Gods means absolutely nothing story-wise, continuity-wise, and that's going to turn off a lot of hardcore DC fans. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that's hurting it tremendously, on top of the other small little things that start to add up over time. And that's the problem. When people look at those small things like identity politics and stuff, they don't realize that when you take a whole bunch of small things and you start adding it up, guess what happens? Those small things become a big thing. And you cannot afford, like a movie like this cannot afford to lose any customers to something, no matter how small. They cannot lose any customers because they're struggling to keep anybody that they possibly can. So I feel like that's where DC ended up falling flat on their face. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.